So with that, I am so excited to introduce our final speaker of the night. And our final speaker is Bryce. And he only has brothers, but he somehow only had daughters. He grew up in Saskatchewan, but he can't handle Toronto winters. And he's usually asleep by now. Bryce, come on up and share your fuck up.
Hello. So when we were coming here, I was talking about how I was super excited to go last, and then I saw everybody, and I'm like, fuck, I gotta go last. So my story begins in, it was like 2013, and I had started my first job in tech. I was at a company called Vision Critical at the time. It was my first tech job, and it was a very exciting company. So they were one of the Canadian tech darlings. It was like them and like Shopify and Open Text and Soft Choice and whatever two words you smash together to make a tech company. They were one of them. And there was a lot of excitement in the office about, billion-dollar IPO and like a lot of things happening within the company. And so for me, I didn't have any real experience. I was selling cell phones at Wireless Wave. I dropped out of university, like I was a college dropout, and I had this job. I was a business development associate at Vision Critical. There was a lot of excitement happening around me, but there was one problem. I fucking hated it. I hated the office environment. I felt like a stray cat they were trying to domesticate, like just being in an office, having to be there like from 9 to 5 for some reason and push emails around. I'm a first generation email jobber where you just respond to emails and that's your life and build PowerPoints. And I wanted to quit like every day. But I also wanted a career, so that would be a bad look for my first job to quit it. So I decided, maybe I just need a hobby. So I landed on improv, right? The improv guy, surprise. And so kind of on a whim, like I didn't have any background in drama or performing arts at this point. I just decided, this seems fun. It was on my feed. Let's sign up. Let's go to a class. And so I remember I went to that first class, and there was like 10, 11, 12 other people there, all with a similar mentality, just to like network, make friends, try something new. I was new to Toronto, so it was a nice way for me to kind of network. And I loved it. It was fun. You get to like play and like make big choices and take risks and do all this weird shit together that you don't get to do as an adult. And you learn this concept of yes and, where you accept things from people and then add to it and you validate one another. And so I got really deep into this hobby, like really deep. I graduated from Second City's improv program. I started doing classes anywhere I could. My friends then became like actors. They didn't become actors. They were actors, but they became my friends. And they were like actors and performers and comedians. I was doing like musical improv. And I can't like sing a note to save my life. So I just would like kind of rap to whatever beat was in the background. And so I was doing it. And then for a few years, I was working at Vision Critical still. I was still working in tech. But I was also becoming a performer. I was building this new skill set, developing a craft. Until I made the big pivot. And I quit my job. I was like, I'm going to go and be an actor. I'm going to do this thing. I have all these friends that are actors. Let's try it out. And the one thing working in tech and working in tech sales is I learned like the sales motion of tech, of like building a prospecting list and outreaching to them and booking meetings and building pipeline. And so I applied those skills to my new career. I built a list of all the agencies in Toronto, outreached to them, got an agent, started auditioning around the city. I landed some commercial work and TV shows and some feature films, and I was doing it. I was being an actor in Toronto, and that's what was happening, and things were cool. But this is Fuckup Nights, all right? I gotta talk about my fuck up. That's what you're here to see, you fucking sickos. Thank you. You don't know what it is yet, but you'll see. And so this is our real kitchen at the time. That's where we lived. It was in Kensington Market, right above the Burgonator. on Augusta, across the street from like Bunners and Blue Banana. We lived in a little tiny apartment in Kensington Market. Me and my partner, who just said, who's we, she's wearing red right here. Her name's Amina. We'll talk about her some more. So, yeah. Go Amina. So let me just talk to you about Amina. So, you good? She is the real big shot. Let's just pause for a second and let her bask in this. She asked for it. We do. We do. We all do. The collective we. So let's talk about her. Let's talk about me first and this fuck up that I went through. So during this pivot, right? So I made this big pivot. Things were happening. I was getting work as an actor. Cool, right? Like, that's what you want. You're getting work, getting paid to act. That's amazing. But what I wasn't prepared for during this pivot was the emotional pivot that was happening at the same time. You know, when you're working in corporate world, you're taught to like not be vulnerable, to not be emotional, to just go and do your job, send your emails, build your PowerPoints, push your papers, go home at 5 or whatever. And that's your life in the corporate world. You're taught to kind of repress those emotions. Acting is the complete opposite, right? You have to access your emotions and express yourself and be vulnerable. And I wasn't in a place to be vulnerable or access my emotions or my emotional state at all. So what ended up happening is I started to emotionally spiral, like a downward spiral of my emotions. I fell into a very deep depression. You know, the kind of depression where like the dark cloud over me, my bones felt heavy, the air felt thick, like life fucking sucked. I was miserable. And I remember one morning in this kitchen, this is a real picture I took. It was in my camera roll when I was prepping this. I found it. One morning I woke up and I go to the kitchen and I'm all miserable and I'm like stomping my way there. And there's some dishes in the sink. And like I was in this mindset where I had these like dark, ruminating, depressed thoughts in my head. So this like little pile of dishes was like a insurmountable mountain of like, fuck, of like shit. Like I gotta deal with these dishes right now. So I'm like slamming them around and doing my thing, washing the dishes. And my partner, Amina, here in the red, at the time when she came, she's still my partner, but at the time, like 5 months into our relationship, we were living in Kensington Market. She comes out of the bedroom, and she's like, sees me and feels my depressed state. And she's like, are you good? Like, are you okay? And I remember like how I felt when she asked me that because, you know, people asked me before, like, how are you? But that was the first time I remember somebody like really wanting to know so they could help, somebody that cared. So I was, I don't know, like 27 at the time. And for the first time, I decided to do something I've never done before, which was be honest about the way I felt. I made that choice. And so I told her, and I was like, honestly, I'm just really trying to do everything I can to not fucking kill myself right now. That's how I felt. I heard of Jesus. Yeah, that's how I felt. That was my truth. I gave her my truth. She asked for it. She wanted it. I gave it to her. And so she's like, okay. She's like, put on your shoes. And she took me here. And this is Cam H's Center for Addiction and Mental Health, the crisis clinic, the lobby of the crisis clinic, which was college in Spadina at the time. We lived in Kensington, so Torontonians that know, like, we walked over there. I mean, I like depressed stomped my way over there. I didn't want to go. They put you in this lobby, and I remember like how fucking weird it was. Like they kind of pat you down, make sure you don't have anything sharp on you, take all your stuff, sit you in here. They lock you from the outside in. You kind of got to sit there and wait. And I remember a social worker came and brought me in. I remember how badly I wanted to just be like, yo, I'm good. Like, we Gucci, we good. Like, get me out of here. Like, I'm fine. But, you know, somebody had brought me here, and I'm in this place that is supposed to be able to help you. So let's just keep being honest. And so they ran me through a bunch of questions and about my emotions, behavior, etc. I just gave it to them. I told them. And I remember at the end of it, she said the weirdest thing. She's like, I think you have BPD. I'm like, okay, cool. I left. She's like, you gotta come back tomorrow. We'll do a full evaluation. And that's what they did. They brought in a psychiatrist, took me through like a full psychiatric evaluation. At the end of it, I was diagnosed with borderline personality disorder, or BPD. And I go home, and I did the thing that we all do whenever we get a new medical ailment, is you just fucking Google it. Just Googling the shit out of borderline personality disorder. But the thing about BPD is when you Google it, it's not good. It's not good at all. It's really fucked, actually. You get through the stats and like what it is. So like, what is it? Like, what's borderline personality disorder? Like, the way I interpret it is people with BPD manage emotions differently. We feel like very extreme emotions where it doesn't make sense to, like you see some dishes and you want to fucking kill yourself, like you're very extreme. Or you disassociate because emotions are too hard to feel, so you disconnect. Both of those are bad, right? And that's kind of what BPD is, how I interpret it in my own head. But when you go through online and start reading about it, a lot of it is about like BPD loved one support groups. Like you go onto Reddit and there's like these support groups of like, do you have someone in your life with BPD? Fucking don't. Like cut those people off. Fuck those people. Like it's kind of like narcissism. Like stay away from people who are narcissistic. Like people with BPD you shouldn't try to love them. You shouldn't try to bring them close because they will hurt you. And that's me, right? I got to reconcile with the fact that this is what I have. I am who they are talking about. And so because of the severity of my symptoms, they fast-tracked me to the front of the line for treatment. And so how treatment works when you have BPD is they had a borderline personality CAMH clinic, and a big part of it is individual therapy. So you work with an individual therapist to talk about it, who specializes in it. And then the other side is DBT, or dialectic behavioral therapy, which is more group therapy. And so that was the treatment plan they put me on. I had to go to DBT, and I had to go to a therapist. And what DBT is you basically just learn skills, like particular skills of how to manage your emotions. So things like distress tolerance. You feel very distressed. How do you bring down the physiology in your body? Emotional regulation. You learn mindfulness. You learn interpersonal relationships. Like these are all kind of like life skills that I think everybody should learn. But when you have BPD, you need to learn them in order to function, in order to contribute to society. And so I go to my first DBT class, and there's 10, 11, 12 other people, and they're all just as fucked up as me. Everybody has BPD. We're all in a room together. And how DBT works is you work on one particular skill every week, work through it in your life, come back and share it with everybody. And I saw all these people kind of like stand up in class and talk to us about how they were managing through the issues that they were having. And I remember how there was this uncanny parallel for me in DBT that was like going into my first improv class. It felt the same. Here's people that are sharing themselves, who are opening up to one another, a group that is validating them and supporting them. And there was like this parallel of support that I felt in my life, so I stuck with it. It was a one-year program. I went to class every day that I had to, and that period of my life, which I thought I was going to be an actor and do all this acting, was spent in crisis and managing my mental health. And that's where I fucked up, is not realizing that I was not in the emotional state to go after this thing that I went after. But I learned something really critical during that period of my life. And what I learned was about this concept of shame and how shame works. And shame thrives in silence, right? Like it wants you to be quiet, and that's how it grows. It's like a sourdough starter you leave on your counter, and I've never made bread. I don't know if that's how that works. Like, yeah, is that how that works? Or like kombucha or whatever, you just fucking leave it there and a thing happens. That's what shame does inside of you, I think. It's in your body, and it just grows, right? The more you're silent, that's what it wants you to do. But I learned if you act opposite to that feeling that shame wants you to have, and you're open, that's how you can achieve your goals and have a big life. And that's why I love this format, and for people to come up and just share their fuck-ups and talk about things that were vulnerable. Fuckup Nights. And so I spent the last few years just being aggressively open about what I felt the most shame about. I went on national news talking about having borderline personality disorder. I did like radio interviews and podcasts, and I did this talk at Ivy Business School, Western University's Wellness Week, and talked to undergrads like, oh, I got BPD, and they're like, yeah. And so this is kind of like that too. And because I did that, and because I made this choice to act opposite, and opposite action is actually a DBT skill, I started to achieve more goals. I went back to school. I did an MBA. I got a first degree in my family. I'm able to raise my kids. And I'm back in tech, and I don't hate it. I'm a senior director at a tech company, and it's cool. Like, we're good. And now, yeah, I teach. Yeah, we've got a lot of tech lovers. We all love tech. And I teach improv. I teach improv for business professionals now to take like this skill I learned 10, 12 years ago to like learn the concepts of yes and communication and collaboration and presenting. And I teach I do like a 6-week cohort and corporate workshops. And I think the core thing of what I'm teaching is helping people like find their unique voice, access that and share it and take up the space and have the validation to do so. So that's my story. I appreciate you letting me take up this space today.
It's over there. Bryce, thank you so much for being so vulnerable and for sharing this story. I know it's definitely not easy. And I think a lot of people can relate. Mental health and failure are just so closely linked. And I think, a lot of us are dealing with something maybe similar. So thank you for opening the conversation about mental health and failure. So with that, we're going to open it up for some Q&A for Bryce.